your furnace kicks on. Again, that familiar rumble that used to mean comfort now sounds like your bank account screaming. You glance at the thermostat, 68 degrees, and do the math you've been avoiding. $300 last month, $400 the month before, and it's only November. By February, you'll be choosing between heat and groceries, between staying warm and staying afloat. But here's what actually keeps you awake at night, the thought you won't say out loud. What happens when the grid goes down? Not if, when. Texas, 2021. Millions freezing in their homes with full tanks of gas they couldn't access. Pipes bursting. Families huddling in cars running in garages, dying from carbon monoxide because they didn't know what you're about to learn. And while you're calculating heating bills, there's something nobody's telling you. Something the energy companies have buried so deep that even mentioning it gets you labeled conspiracy theorist. Right now, pause this video and comment either prepared or unprepared, because what I'm about to reveal will prove which one you actually are, not which one you think you are. The difference could save your life before spring. Here's the uncomfortable truth that'll make HVAC companies furious. You're being robbed, not by criminals, by a system that's convinced you heat is something you buy, something you're entitled to only if you can afford it, only if the infrastructure holds. They've trained you like a laboratory animal. Cold equals payment. Warmth equals dependence. And you've accepted this as reality because everyone else has. But physics doesn't care about your conditioning. Thermodynamics doesn't require a monthly bill. Heat is energy, and energy is everywhere, free, infinite, waiting for anyone smart enough to capture it. Your grandfather knew this. His grandfather knew this. But somewhere between rural survival and suburban comfort, we forgot. We traded knowledge for convenience, self-reliance for a thermostat. And now, when a convenient system fails, and it will fail, it's failing right now in ways you haven't noticed yet. We're completely helpless. This isn't theory. Last winter, Germany faced energy rationing, rolling blackouts across California, heating oil shortages in the Northeast. And this winter is going to be worse. Natural gas reserves at decade lows. Propane prices up 40%. And whether it's infrastructure failure, economic collapse, or just your personal financial crisis, the result is the same. You freezing desperate with absolutely no backup plan. Because nobody taught you that backup plans exist. Most people right now, they're panic buying space heaters, stocking up on firewood they'll burn through in 3 weeks, investing in generators that require gasoline they won't be able to get. They're solving tomorrow's problem with yesterday's solutions, completely missing the methods that actually work when everything else fails. And the reason you haven't heard about these methods isn't because they're complicated. It's because they're too simple, too free, too independent. When you can heat your home without buying anything, without connecting to anything, without depending on anything, you stop being a profitable customer. You become something the system can't control. And that's exactly what you're about to become. I've spent 17 years testing survival methods, not reading about them, testing them, living in unheated spaces in January, measuring actual temperature gains, separating viral nonsense from legitimate physics. And what I've discovered is that 7 methods, 7 specific, scientifically proven techniques, can keep you warm all winter without spending a single dollar on conventional fuel. Not warmer, not comfortable, warm enough to survive, warm enough to function, warm enough that frozen pipes and hypothermia become problems other people face. These aren't hippie experiments. They're engineered solutions based on thermodynamics, used by militaries, by disaster response teams, by people who literally cannot afford to be wrong about heat. But here's where it gets interesting. Item number 7, the last one we'll cover, isn't even a device. It's not a thing you build or buy. It's a principle so counterintuitive that when I first heard it, I thought it was fantasy. Then I tested it. 72 hours in a sealed room in December. Outside temperature, 19 degrees. No electricity. No combustion. No conventional heat source whatsoever. Internal temperature stabilized at 54 degrees. Uncomfortable? Absolutely. Survivable? Completely. And here's the part that'll make you angry. This information used to be common knowledge. It was in Boy Scout manuals, farm almanacs, Depression-era survival guides. then it disappeared, systematically. Because warm people who don't need the grid are dangerous to profits. Comment, still learning. If you're actually following this, because most people have already clicked away, they want a magic heater, a simple product. They're not ready for the truth that survival isn't about buying the right thing. It's about knowing the right principles. If you're still here, you're different. You're someone who understands that knowledge weighs nothing, costs nothing, and works when everything else fails. So, let's get into the methods. 7 unconventional ways to heat your space when conventional heating becomes impossible. And remember, we're not talking about staying comfortable at 70 degrees. We're talking about not dying, about maintaining core body temperature, about keeping your space above freezing so pipes don't burst and hypothermia doesn't set in. That's the standard. Survival, not comfort. Method number 1. And I need you to understand something before we start. Every single one of these methods works better in combination. They're not competing solutions. They're layers. Redundancy. When method 1 gives you 10 degrees, method 3 gives you another 8. Method 5 adds 12 more. Suddenly you've turned a 20-degree death trap into a livable space. So don't judge any single method as insufficient. Judge the system, the complete approach, because that's what's going to save you when the power goes out at 2 in the morning and it's negative 15 outside. The first method most people completely misunderstand is thermal mass, and they misunderstand it in a way that actually makes their situation worse. You probably heard about it. Storing heat in dense materials like bricks or water. Sounds simple. Sounds obvious. So people go out and buy a bunch of concrete blocks, stack them near a window, and wonder why their house is still freezing. Here's what they're missing. Thermal mass without a heat source is just cold weight. It's not magic. It's physics. And physics has rules you can't break by wishing. Those concrete blocks everyone recommends, they're absorbing heat, yes, but they're absorbing it from your already cold room, making everything colder until they equalize. You create a heat sink, not a heat source. This is why you see so many people online claiming thermal mass doesn't work. It's not that the principle is wrong. It's that they're applying it backwards. Here's how thermal mass actually functions when you understand thermodynamics instead of repeating what you heard on YouTube. During the day, if you have any heat source, and we'll get to free sources in a moment, thermal mass absorbs that energy and stores it. Dense materials like water, concrete, brick, even dirt, they heat up slowly but hold temperature for hours after the source disappears. Water is the king here. 1 gallon of water stores roughly 100 BTUs per degree of temperature increase. That means if you heat 20 gallons of water just 20 degrees above room temperature, you've stored 40,000 BTUs. For context, that's enough energy to heat a small insulated room for 6 to 8 hours. But here's the critical part nobody explains. You need a charging cycle and a discharge cycle. Charge during the day when you have sun, or body heat, or cooking heat. Discharge at night when temperatures drop. This creates a thermal battery. The practical application looks like this. You take dark colored water containers, black 5-gallon buckets, dark blue plastic barrels, even painted milk jugs, and you position them where they'll receive direct sunlight through windows during the day. Dark colors absorb solar radiation and convert it to heat. The water inside heats up, sometimes reaching 80, 90, even 100 degrees if your insulation and sun exposure are optimal. That's passive solar thermal mass, and it requires zero energy input beyond positioning. At night, those containers radiate stored heat back into your space. They're not going to make it tropical, but they'll raise your ambient temperature 10, 15, sometimes 20 degrees above outside temperature without burning anything, without electricity, without cost. The multiplier principle here is insane. Those same water containers also serve as emergency drinking water, as thermal barriers when positioned against exterior walls, as humidity sources in dry winter air, as weight for stabilizing structures, as workout equipment if you're maintaining fitness during crisis. 1 item, 5 functions, 0 ongoing cost. But thermal mass means nothing if you're bleeding heat faster than you're generating it. Which brings us to method 2. And this is where most people's survival plans completely fall apart because they're focused on heat generation when they should be focused on heat retention. You cannot produce enough heat to overcome poor insulation. Impossible. Even a roaring fireplace can't heat a space that's hemorrhaging warmth through walls, windows, and ceiling. The average home loses 40% of its heat through the attic, 25% through walls, 15% through floors, and 20% through windows and doors. You're trying to fill a bucket with holes. And the solution isn't more water. It's plugging the holes. Here's the method everyone overlooks because it's not sexy, not high-tech, not something you can buy from a sponsor. You create an emergency thermal envelope, not your entire house. One room, the smallest room you can realistically live in, a bedroom, ideally interior without exterior walls. You seal it completely. Windows get covered with multiple layers. Bubble wrap attached with water creates an insulating dead air space, then heavy blankets or sleeping bags, then plastic sheeting. This creates an R value of roughly 10 to 15, compared to standard windows at R2. Your door gets weather stripped with foam tape, then a heavy blanket hung inside. If there are vents, you block them temporarily with plastic and tape. You're creating a shelter within a shelter. And this single action, this one free modification, using materials you probably already own, can reduce your heat loss by 60 to 70%. That's not an improvement. That's a multiplication of effectiveness for every other heating method you employ. Think about it mathematically. If method 1 gives you 15 degrees of heat gain in a normal room, but that room is losing heat at a rate that neutralizes 12 degrees, your net gain is 3 degrees. Barely measurable. Definitely not survivable. But if you cut heat loss by 70%, that same 15-degree heat gain now only loses 4 degrees to the environment. Net gain jumps to 11 degrees. Same effort, same heat source. Triple the effectiveness. This is why people freeze to death with heaters running. They're generating heat, yes, but they're generating it in spaces designed for central heating systems that pump massive amounts of energy constantly. Your emergency methods can't compete with that unless you change the environment. The multiplier here extends beyond just heating. That sealed room becomes a safe room. A place you can defend the security becomes an issue. A clean room if smoke or air quality deteriorates. A quarantine zone if illness strikes. A noise-dampened space if you need to avoid detection. And creating it costs nothing if you're using existing materials, blankets, plastic sheeting, duct tape. If you're buying materials, you're looking at maybe $40 total for enough supplies to seal a standard bedroom. $40 that amplifies every other survival investment you make. But here's the question nobody wants to answer. How many of you have actually done this? How many have tested your thermal envelope before you need it? Because I promise you, trying to seal a room where your fingers are already numb from cold, when panic is setting in, when your family is depending on you, that's not the time to be learning. Test it now. This week. Turn off your heat, seal one room, and see what happens. Track the temperature. Find the leaks. Learn what actually works in your specific space with your specific materials. Pause right here. We've covered 2 methods that don't require burning anything, don't require electricity, don't require special equipment. Just knowledge, just physics, just preparation. Most people quit right here, right before the methods that actually generate heat from nothing. Comment, still here, if you're committed to finishing, because Method 3 is worth more than everything we discussed combined. Method 3 is where chemistry becomes your survival advantage, and it's the method that'll get me the most criticism because it involves something people are terrified of without understanding. Combustion. But not the combustion you're thinking. Not with fires or propane heaters or kerosene lamps. Those require fuel you'll run out of. Those produce carbon monoxide that'll kill you faster than cold. Those are what unprepared people do. We're talking about alcohol combustion, specifically isopropyl alcohol or ethanol, burned in controlled conditions that produce maximum heat with minimum danger. And before you comment that alcohol is expensive, let me show you the math that proves you wrong. A quart of 70% isopropyl alcohol costs roughly $4 at any pharmacy. That quart contains approximately 800 milliliters of pure alcohol, burned in an efficient alcohol burner, which you can make from a soda can in under 5 minutes. That generates roughly 6,000 BTUs per hour. For comparison, a standard space heater uses 1,500 watts, which equals roughly 5,000 BTUs per hour, and costs you about 20 cents in electricity. Your $4 quart of alcohol runs for 2 hours, producing 12,000 total BTUs at a cost of $2 per hour. More expensive than electricity, yes, but infinitely cheaper than freezing to death when electricity isn't available. And here's the part that changes everything. Alcohol combustion produces only water vapor and carbon dioxide, no carbon monoxide, no toxic byproducts, no soot, burned in proper ratios with adequate ventilation. It's the safest combustion heat source that exists. But safety requires understanding the chemistry. Alcohol burns an almost invisible flame. This terrifies people who can't see what's happening. But invisible doesn't mean uncontrolled. A proper alcohol burner, made from a tuna can, a roll of toilet paper, and a bottle of alcohol, creates a wick system that regulates fuel delivery. You place the toilet paper roll in the can, pour alcohol over it until saturated, light the center. The paper acts as a wick, drawing alcohol at control rate. The flame burns at about 600 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to generate significant heat, cool enough that it won't ignite nearby materials if you maintain proper clearance. 8 inches minimum from any surface. Never unattended. Never in a sealed space without ventilation. These aren't suggestions. These are survival laws. The multiplier principle with alcohol heating is extraordinary. That same burner also boils water for purification, cooks food when other methods fail, provides light in darkness, serves as a psychological anchor. Humans are hardwired to find comfort in control flame, and alcohol stores indefinitely. No degradation, no special conditions. A case of isopropyl bottles in your closet represents emergency heat for multiple days, takes up less space than a sleeping bag, and costs less than a single tank of propane. But here's what separates survivors from victims. Practice. You need to build and test your alcohol burner before you need it. You need to measure how long your fuel lasts, how much heat it actually generates in your space, how to extinguish it safely. You smother it with a metal lid. Never try to blow it out. Never use water. Knowledge without practice is just trivia. Practice without pressure is just hobby. You need both. But alcohol heat means nothing if you're generating it during the day when you should be harvesting method 4, which is pure solar gain. And this is where most people's understanding of solar heating is so backwards it's almost criminal. You don't need solar panels. You don't need expensive technology. You need black surfaces, transparent barriers, and basic thermodynamics. The sun delivers approximately 1,000 watts of energy per square meter on a clear day. That's over 3,000 BTUs per hour per square meter. Free, infinite, requires zero infrastructure. And you're ignoring it because you think solar means photovoltaic, means electricity, means expensive installations. Wrong. Solar thermal is the oldest technology humans have. It's why dark rocks feel hot in sunlight. It's why your car interior becomes an oven on summer days. It's why greenhouses work. And you can exploit this with materials you probably have right now. Here's the method. You take black containers, paint cans, plastic buckets, even cardboard boxes lined with black trash bags, and fill them with water. You position these in south-facing windows where they'll receive maximum sun exposure. The black surface absorbs solar radiation. The water stores the thermal energy. Within a few hours, that water can reach 90, 100, even 110 degrees depending on conditions. That's not theory. That's measured reality in climates from Alaska to Arizona. And that superheated water then radiates into your space for hours after sunset. But here's the advanced technique that multiplies effectiveness. You create a solar box. Take a cardboard box, line it with aluminum foil to reflect light. Place your black water containers inside. Cover the top with clear plastic to trap heat and angle it toward the sun. You've just built a solar oven that also functions as a thermal mass charger. Interior temperatures can hit 140, 160 degrees. The water inside becomes thermal storage that maintains heat through the entire night. The multiplier applications are endless. That same setup pasteurizes drinking water. 160 degrees for 6 minutes kills all pathogens. Cooks food slowly but effectively. Dries wet clothes or gear. Serves as a signal device. That reflective interior is visible for miles. And it costs nothing if you're using salvage materials. Maybe $15 if you're buying everything new. $15 for a heating system that works as long as the sun rises. But solar gain means nothing if you don't understand Method 5. And Method 5 is the one that'll make engineers angry because it violates their assumptions about heat distribution. Method 5 is convection stacking. And the reason nobody teaches this is because it seems too simple to matter. But simple doesn't mean ineffective. Heat rises. Everyone knows this. Warm air is less dense than cold air, so it floats upward. In a normal house, this is a problem. All your expensive heated air clusters at the ceiling while you freeze at floor level. But in a survival situation, when you understand the principle instead of fighting it, you can weaponize thermodynamics. Here's what I mean. That sealed room you created in Method 2, it has a ceiling. And that ceiling is now the hottest part of your space because every bit of heat you generate, body heat, alcohol burners, solar gain, thermal mass radiation, eventually rises and collects there. Most people ignore this. They sit on the floor wondering why they're still cold, while 80-degree air hovers uselessly above their heads. You're going to be smarter. The solution is creating a heat recapture system using nothing but gravity and airflow. You build a vertical living space, not literally building structures, but arranging your survival setup vertically. Sleep on elevated platforms, cots, bunks, even pallets stacked 2 feet off the ground. Work at standing height or higher. Your thermal envelope is now divided into zones. Cold zone at floor level where you store water and supplies. Moderate zone at waist height where you move and work. Warm zone at head height and above where you sleep and rest. This single reorganization can increase your perceived warmth by 10 to 15 degrees without generating any additional heat. You're simply positioning yourself where the heat already is. And during the day, when you're generating heat through activity or cooking or alcohol burners, you can enhance this with a simple circulation method. You take a piece of cardboard, create a fan, doesn't need to be fancy, a hand fan from a dollar store works, and you push that ceiling-trapped air back down into your living space. 30 seconds of fanning every hour redistributes trapped thermal energy. It costs nothing. It requires no technology. And it prevents the thermal stratification that kills people who don't understand airflow. The multiplier here is about spatial efficiency. When you organize vertically, you reduce the volume of air you need to heat. A 10 by 10 room with 8-foot ceilings contains 800 cubic feet of air. If you create a living space in the top 4 feet only, sleeping, sitting, working elevated, you've cut your heated volume in half. Half the volume means half the heat loss. Same effort generates double the temperature increase. And this isn't comfort optimization. This is survival physics. Every degree matters when the difference between 34 degrees and 32 degrees is the difference between liquid water and burst pipes, between muscle function and hypothermic stupor, between sleeping through the night and waking every hour shivering uncontrollably. But convection stacking means nothing if you're losing your primary heat source through the single biggest mistake survivors make, which brings us to Method 6. And I need you to understand that this method alone has saved more lives in extreme survival situations than every high-tech heating device combined. We're talking about body heat capture. And before you roll your eyes thinking this is obvious, let me explain why everyone does this wrong. Your body generates approximately 300 to 400 BTUs per hour just maintaining homeostasis. That's roughly 100 watts of continuous heat production, more during activity, less during sleep. But most people radiate 90% of this heat into open air where it's immediately lost. They're personal space heaters warming empty rooms. When you understand heat retention at the personal level, you can survive temperatures that would kill someone depending on external heat sources. Here's the technique that changes everything. You create a microclimate, not heating your room. Not heating your house, heating the 6 inches of air immediately surrounding your body and trapping it there. This is what quality sleeping bags do. They don't generate heat. They prevent your body heat from escaping. But you don't need an expensive sleeping bag. You need layers and vapor barriers and dead air space. Start with a base layer that wicks moisture. Cotton kills, synthetic or wool survives. Add an insulating layer. Fleece down. Even crumpled newspaper creates dead air pockets that trap heat. Finish with a windproof shell. Even a trash bag worn under your outer layer eliminates convective heat loss. These 3 layers can maintain core body temperature in environments where exposed skin would develop frostbite in minutes. But the advanced technique multiplies its effectiveness exponentially. You combine personal insulation with a heat-reflective bivy. These are emergency blankets, Mylar space blankets, the shiny metallic things people mock until they're dying. Here's what those blankets actually do. They reflect up to 90% of radiant body heat back toward you. Your body radiates infrared energy constantly. Normally, this escapes into the environment. Wrap yourself in Mylar, and that energy bounces back. You're creating a personal greenhouse effect. And when you layer this properly, insulated clothing, then Mylar, then sleeping bag or blankets, then enclose in your sealed thermal room, you can maintain comfortable body temperature in spaces where ambient air is below freezing. I've tested this at 15 degrees external temperature inside the layered system, comfortable enough to sleep soundly for 8 hours. No external heat source, just trapped body heat in physics. The multiplier applications are critical. The same layering principle applies to group survival. 2 people sharing body heat and a combined heat capture system generate 600 to 800 BTUs combined. That's enough to maintain a small enclosed space, a tent, a sealed closet, even a car interior, at survivable temperatures indefinitely. 3 or 4 people together become a biological furnace. This is why people survived in concentration camps, in Arctic expeditions, in disaster scenarios where conventional heat was impossible. Bodies generate heat constantly. The question is whether you're smart enough to keep it. But body heat means nothing if you're making the critical mistake that kills more people than actual cold, which is method 7. And this one is purely psychological, but absolutely lethal if you ignore it. Method 7 isn't a device. It's not a technique. It's a mindset shift that determines whether you survive or become a statistic. The mistake is panic thermogenesis, burning through energy reserves, fighting anxiety instead of cold. When people realize they're in heating crisis, their body stress response activates. Heart rate increases. Breathing accelerates. Muscles tense. This burns calories at triple the normal rate, and calories are heat. Your food is your fuel. When you panic, you're running your furnace at maximum output for zero gain. You're depleting reserves you'll need for the weeks ahead. And once those reserves are gone, hypothermia doesn't care how much you worry. Your core temperature drops, your metabolism fails, and you die slowly while your brain shuts down cognitive function piece by piece. The solution is cold adaptation training. Before crisis hits, you expose yourself to control cold. Turn your thermostat down. Take cold showers. Sleep with fewer blankets. Your body adapts. Brown fat increases. Specialized tissue that burns energy to generate heat more efficiently. Your shivering threshold lowers. Your psychological tolerance expands. What felt unbearable at 55 degrees becomes manageable. And this adaptation is the difference between survival and surrender. When everyone else is panicking at the first sign of cold, you're calmly implementing methods 1 through 6 because you've already proven to yourself that cold is uncomfortable, not fatal. That discomfort is temporary. That you control your response even when you can't control the environment. This mental resilience, this proven capability, is the ultimate multiplier because every method we've discussed requires clear thinking, patient implementation, and sustained effort. Panic destroys all 3. Let's bring this full circle. You now understand 7 methods that require no grid, no gas, no wood. Thermal mass captures free solar energy. Sealed thermal envelopes multiply effectiveness. Alcohol provides emergency combustion heat safely. Solar boxes harvest thousands of BTUs daily. Convection stacking positions you where heat naturally collects. Personal heat capture systems maintain core temperature. And psychological preparation ensures you execute instead of panic. Combine these methods and you transform a 20-degree exterior temperature into a 45 to 55-degree survival space. Uncomfortable? Yes. Survivable? Absolutely. And that's the standard that matters when systems fail. No guarantees. No promises that you'll stay comfortable. But you now know more than 99% of people who'll freeze when infrastructure collapses. That knowledge is your advantage. That preparation is your insurance. When everyone else is fighting for propane that doesn't exist, burning furniture for 20 minutes of heat, making desperate choices that get them killed, you'll be implementing free methods that work as long as physics exists. Honest question: what's the one method you're testing this week? Comment below. I read every single one and reply to the detailed answers. Think I'm wrong about alcohol safety or solar effectiveness? Good. Drop your alternative method. Best comment gets pinned and a full technical response. And if you haven't already, subscribe and absolutely smash that bell. Your winter survival might depend on a follow-up video I'm releasing next week. The advanced techniques that combine all 7 methods into a complete system. If this saved you from wasting money on heating solutions that'll fail when you need them most, share it with one person who needs this. Not for me, for them. They'll thank you when the power goes out and they're still warm. Stay prepared, stay intelligent, or stay dependent on systems designed to fail. Your choice. One more thing. See that progress bar? Not done yet. 99% leave before this. The 1% who stay get the hidden 8th method. The one I can't put in the main video because it challenges building codes and insurance regulations. But it's the most effective thermal method that exists for true off-grid survival. Method 8 is earth coupling. Your house sits on ground that maintains constant temperature year-round, roughly 50 to 55 degrees depending on region, below the frost line. That's free thermal mass bigger than anything you can build. In winter, that ground is warmer than outside air. You can tap this by creating an earth tube, PVC pipe buried 6 feet deep, running 50 to 100 feet, with intake outside and exhaust into your sealed room. Air travels through the pipe, exchanges heat with surrounding earth, enters your space pre-warmed. It's a ground source heat exchanger requiring zero energy beyond air movement. Costs maybe $150 in materials. Provides 8 to 12 degree temperature boost indefinitely. This is how root cellars maintain temperature. How ancient civilizations survived extreme climates. How modern passive houses reduce heating by 70%. And it's completely legal if you're not claiming it as primary HVAC. Comment Earth if you found this. Welcome to the Inner Circle. We'll go deeper next time.